The entire atmosphere vanishes. Every molecule of nitrogen and oxygen simply ceases to exist. You are standing in a perfect vacuum. There is no wind, no pressure, just a sudden, terrifying void where the air used to be. The world goes instantly, violently silent. Internal pressure becomes the enemy. The air inside your lungs expands rapidly. Holding your breath is a mistake. Lung tissue ruptures as oxygen is forced into the bloodstream. Eardrums pop with a clinical snap. The sudden pressure drop turns the liquid in your soft tissues into gas. Tiny bubbles form in the joints. This is called ebullition. It is not boiling from heat, but boiling from a lack of pressure. Moisture behaves strangely. Saliva on the tongue begins to boil at body temperature. Tears evaporate instantly from the eyes. The skin doesn't explode because it is strong enough to hold internal pressure for a short time. However, the blood stays liquid thanks to the elasticity of veins. The real problem is the oxygen gradient. Normally, oxygen moves from lungs to blood. Now, the gradient is reversed. Oxygen is ripped out of the blood and dumped into the void. Brain cells begin to flicker. Consciousness lasts for about 15 seconds. Fortunately, the vacuum only lasts for 5. The physical trauma is immediate, but the biological shutdown is just beginning to ramp up. Sound requires a medium. Without air, there are no vibrations. The screaming of billions of people is completely mute. A skyscraper collapsing makes no noise. A jet engine failing is silent. The universe is a mute movie for 5 seconds of absolute, crushing stillness. Thermal regulation fails. Heat can only leave the body through radiation, which is slow. You do not freeze instantly. Instead, the sun becomes a laser. Without the ozone layer, ultraviolet radiation burns the skin in seconds. At the same time, the shade is freezing. Heat transfer via convection is gone. The temperature of the surface fluctuates wildly. Metal railings become searingly hot. Concrete blocks hold heat. Any liquid exposed to the vacuum flashes into vapor, which then freezes into tiny ice crystals. These crystals create a shimmering fog of frozen blood and spit around every living organism. The Earth becomes a sterile, silent gallery of frozen, boiling statues. Everything that relies on air for stability begins to wobble. The lack of atmospheric pressure allows volatile compounds in the soil to off-gas, creating tiny, chaotic geysers of dirt and gas. Global infrastructure collapses. Every airplane in the sky loses lift instantly. They don't glide, they fall like stones. Every tire on every car on Earth pops simultaneously. The sudden loss of pressure causes sealants in industrial pipes to burst. Vacuum-sealed food packaging explodes. Every window in every skyscraper shatters outward as the internal building pressure fights the void. The ocean begins to boil at the surface. A massive layer of water vapor expands upward, creating a temporary, chaotic steam atmosphere. This steam doesn't provide oxygen, it just adds heat and chaos. The lack of air removes all friction for moving objects. A gust of wind from the moment of disappearance sends debris flying at terrifying speeds, undisturbed by air resistance. The planet is a chaotic mess of falling planes, exploding tires, and boiling seas. It is a very expensive 5 seconds. The physical structure of the world is being dismantled by basic thermodynamics. Everything that was held together by the weight of the air is now fighting to expand into the emptiness. Then the 5 seconds end. The atmosphere does not gently drift back, it reappears instantly. This is a catastrophic event. Trillions of tons of air slam back into the vacuum at supersonic speeds. The resulting shockwave is not a breeze, it is a planetary hammer. The air rushes back toward the center of the vacuum zones with such force that it creates a series of global sonic booms. The pressure spike is immense. Every single remaining window on Earth shatters inward. The air slams into the boiling ocean, compressing the steam instantly. This causes a secondary thermal explosion. The sudden repressurization crushes the lungs of anyone who survived the first 5 seconds. The force of the returning air strips the topsoil from the Earth. Trees are snapped like toothpicks. Buildings that were already weakened by the vacuum are simply flattened by the returning wall of nitrogen and oxygen. The atmosphere returns. But it does so with the kinetic energy of 1 billion nuclear bombs. The sound is finally back. It is a single, planet-wide scream of rushing air and collapsing concrete. The world is once again breathable, but there is very little left to breathe. The dust settles, most of the world is a flat plain of rubble. Survivors are few. The remaining people are mostly suffering from severe decompression sickness and third-degree ultraviolet burns. The global economy has vanished. The internet is offline because the data centers were crushed by the atmospheric hammer. However, the laws of physics remain intact. The Earth is still spinning. The sun is still shining. The only thing missing is the functioning infrastructure of modern civilization and most of the mammalian population. Among the ruins, a single insurance adjuster crawls out from a pile of bricks. He looks at the devastation. He sighs. He notes that the policy explicitly excludes acts of God, including the spontaneous temporary disappearance of the planetary atmosphere. The claim is denied. The vacuum was a bit much. Next time we will try something smaller, like replacing the moon with a giant ball of cheese. Subscribe to the What If Club.